Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the morning report. Today, or this morning I should say, we have AI in the classroom as the morning report for this morning by the New York Times. Let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, the morning. AI in the classroom. Today is July 9, 2025. 8:34 a.m. Good morning. Here's the latest news. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said the rescuers would continue to search for those affected by the floods. Quote, "We will not stop until we identify and recover every single body." At least 173 people remain missing. Ukraine war. President Trump expressed frustration with Vladimir Putin. Quote, "We get a lot of bullshit thrown at us by Putin," unquote, he said. Quote, "He's very nice to us all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless," unquote. Tariffs. The government continues to negotiate trade deals. Read how Trump has remade the U.S. economy. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have a link to that in the video description. Today, we're also explaining how schools are using artificial intelligence. Chatbots have wormed their way into everything: phones, cars, TVs, offices. They're also in kids' classrooms. Microsoft and OpenAI announced yesterday that they would spend millions on a new program that will train teachers to use artificial intelligence. It's part of a bigger push by tech companies to get their chatbots into schools. They're selling AI subscriptions to administrators and promising them that the bots will help teachers grade assignments, prepare lessons, and draft recommendation letters. The companies say AI proficiency will prepare kids for the workforce. They also approach students directly with discounted subscription rates around exam periods. It's an old playbook. Get kids hooked and you've got future customers. But do chatbots actually help them learn? So far, there's little evidence. Today, it gets explained to you guys how students have become guinea pigs in a national classroom learning experiment. Ladies and gentlemen, whoa, what's happening? We're about to learn that after years of hesitancy and hand wringing, ringing about AI, schools are starting to experiment with chatbots, some with enhanced privacy guardrails, some without. In a national representative survey, nearly half of districts reported having provided AI training for their teachers as of last fall. That's twice the number from the previous year. In Kelso, Wash, middle and high schoolers used Google's Gemini this school year for tasks like research and writing. In Newark, an AI tool from Khan Academy helps teachers place elementary school students into study groups based on their skill levels. It also answers students' questions as teachers give lessons. Colleges are buying chatbots too. California State University's system just signed a $17 million deal with OpenAI to give its 460,000 students access to ChatGPT, despite major state funding cuts. The school wants to equip students with AI to indulge computer code, make digital art with essays and research assignments. Schools like Duke and the University of Maryland are among a growing group that have introduced homegrown chatbots for similar tasks. Ladies and gentlemen, same pitch, new era. Tech companies are using an old marketing strategy for promise that the latest tech will solve classroom problems. In the early 2000s, they told parents and educators that laptops would revolutionize classroom learning. Districts spent millions. 2 decades later, tech companies are still peddling the same fear of missing out. They suggest students need cutting-edge tools for tomorrow's economy, and schools that don't provide them are setting their students up for failure. Quote, "I don't want my kids to get left behind," unquote. That's the first thing we fear from districts, unquote, Vicky Zubovic said, who heads outreach for Khan Academy's new classroom AI service, told me. The government is on board too. Trump signed an executive order in April urging schools to integrate AI into classrooms at all grade levels. He said doing so would be necessary to ensure the United States remains a global leader in this technology revolution. Ladies and gentlemen, will it help students learn? Let's find that out. While tech companies promise that AI can facilitate personal learning, many students and educators are using chatbots as a sophisticated search engine. Some also use it to cheat, including by drafting essays. The Jetsonian features are familiar. Interview prep bots and virtual tutors have been around for years. Julia Kaufman, Kaufman, who tracks national education data for the RAND Corporation, told me that it was really hard to know whether AI would actually improve student learning. Since the tools are so new, there is virtually no research on their efficiency yet. Laptop programs offer a sobering precedent. They modestly improved students' long-term achievement. An analysis of 10 studies found small but statistically significant bumps in writing and math and science, but those gains often relied on teacher buy-in and revamped curriculums and fell short of interventions like reducing class sizes and offering tutors. This time around, the stakes are arguably higher. A generation of students is learning what it means to coexist with and depend on powerful, often opaque technology. In many cases, they're handing over their data to tech companies, and researchers won't know for years whether the experiment has worked. Ladies and gentlemen, for more, did you study computer science? The Times wants to hear about what it's like to apply for jobs and internships right now. Someone is using AI to impersonate the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, in text and voice messages to foreign diplomats. Ladies and gentlemen, time for the latest news. Texas floods. The flooding in Texas is a story best told and felt through photography and video. Carter Johnson, operating from the center of the disaster zone in Kerr County, made many of his strongest images using a drone. Stephen Rise, a photo editor on the National Desk, explains why that was essential to the coverage. Reporting on a disaster like a flash flood is difficult and dangerous. Roads are underwater or blocked by debris. Bridges are damaged. Just getting from point A to point B takes planning. Aerial photography with a drone lets you see places that are using unreachable on foot. That are unreachable on foot, and minimizes the risk to the photographer. It can also be difficult to comprehend the magnitude of a disaster like this one, and having a wider view can help our readers understand what is at stake. People unfamiliar with Texas Hill Country can see the topograph of the landscape. You can feel as if you are there and grasp what makes this region unique. But flying a drone can carry risks. Flight restrictions are often in place because drones can interfere with search and rescue operations. On Monday, for example, a helicopter involved in search efforts in Kerr County, Kerr County, made an emergency landing after striking a private drone. Drone photography also has limitations. When viewing events from the sky, you have to be careful not to lose sight of the human side of a tragedy like this one. The lives that are affected below. Ladies and gentlemen, more on the flooding. Kerr County, where the worst flooding was, has at least 161 people still missing. Almost all of those who remain unaccounted for. Senator Ted Cruz was vacationing in Greece as floods hit his state. It wasn't the first time he's been out of the country during a natural disaster. Rivers are the soul of the Texas Hill Country and a source of heartache. Rick Rojas writes. Ladies and gentlemen, government overreach. The Supreme Court said that the Trump regime can slash the federal workforce and dismantle executive agencies. Though the justices allowed Trump to go ahead, they did not rule on whether specific plans were legal. Thousands of federal workers now wait for their agencies to decide who stays, who goes, and when. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into trade. Instead of treating tariffs as one of a broader trade policy, Trump views them as as a weapon to rebalance global influence. Maggie Haberman writes, Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, is leading a search to replace Jerome Powell as Federal Reserve Chair. He's also a candidate for the job. What constitutes a trade deal these days has become a tricky question. Trump has used the term liberally. Ladies and gentlemen, more on the Trump regime. Trump used to be skeptical of cryptocurrencies. Read a deep dive on how the industry turned him into crypto's most important supporter. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have a link to that in the video description. California rejected the Trump regime's demand to bar transgender athletes from girls and women's sports. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into Ukraine and Russia. Ukrainians welcomed Trump's plans to send them more weapons, but some fear that he might change his mind again. Russia plotted to burn down a Michelin-starred London restaurant and kidnap its owner, a former cell phone tycoon who had criticized Putin, according to court documents. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into the wildfires. In less than a week, wildfires in Syria have scorched an area roughly the size of Washington, D.C. See photos and videos of the destruction. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have a link to the photos and videos of the destruction in the video description. Wildfires are also burning on the outskirts of Marseille, Marseille, France's second city. Those fires have injured over 100 people. Ladies and gentlemen, other big stories. Let's get into it. Flash flooding in southern New Mexico killed at least 3 people. The waters also swept away homes. See a video. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have a video link in the video description. Joe Biden's inner circle took pains to prevent people from interacting with him. Tyler Pager writes in an article adapted from his book about the 2024 election. Police and demonstrators clashed during anti-government protests in Kenya. At least 31 people have been killed, according to a Kenya human rights group. A man died after being sucked into a jet engine at a Milan airport. An official there said the TSA will let travelers keep their shoes on in security lines at some major airports. Ladies and gentlemen, a brief reporting on that is to come. Ladies and gentlemen, time for the morning quiz. This question comes from a recent edition of the newsletter. A new IRS policy announced on Monday in a court filing will allow fewer deductions for owners of exotic pets. Let churches erode policy. Candidates from the pulpit. Give a tax break for buying an American car. Reduce the number of audits of the wealthiest households. Ladies and gentlemen, opinions. Israel's military success in Iran could turn into a liability if Iran concludes that only a nuclear bomb can protect it. Mairav, Mairav, Zonzin, Zonszien, writes, here's a column by Ross Douthat on Elon Musk's third party. Everything the New York Times offers, all in one subscription. Morning readers save an unlimited access to the Times with this introductory offer. Ladies and gentlemen, Kennedy's campaign. How the health secretary transformed the FDA and sowed chaos at the agency. Ladies and gentlemen, your pick. In the most clicked article in the morning yesterday, Wirecutter shares the best Prime Day videos, deals. You can also see editors' picks for deals under $100. Ladies and gentlemen, trading. Mattel's next Barbie doll will have type 1 diabetes, CNN reports. Ladies and gentlemen, lives lived. Richard Greenberg was called the novel coward of the Brady Bunch generation for his play about the manners and mores of New York's upper middle class. He was best known for Take Me Out, about a baseball player's decision to publicly reveal his homosexuality. Greenberg died at 67. Ladies and gentlemen, time for sports. Wimbledon, on the first day of the singles quarterfinals, number one Aryna, Aryna Sabalenka narrowly avoided an upset against her unseeded opponent, and Carlos Alcaraz defeated Cam Norrie, Britain's last man standing, in straight sets. Ladies and gentlemen, WNBA. The Indiana Fever's Caitlin Clark and the Minnesota Lynx Napiza, Napheza Collier, drafted their rosters for All-Star Game. For the All-Star Game, and they agreed to swap coaches. Ladies and gentlemen, arts and ideas. When Lena Dunham moved to London in 2021, she had given up on love, but love had not given up on her. She soon met the British musician who would become her husband. Dunham turned their story into a 10-episode Netflix show, Too Much, which tries to reimagine the romantic comedy. Read an interview with Dunham and the show's stars. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have a link to that in the video description. For now, more on culture. People are coming together at bars to watch episodes of Love Island USA, the pop culture obsession of the summer. After Netanyahu said he'd nominated Trump. I did not mean to say president, because really, the coward isn't my president. I don't support him for my reasons. Mostly because he's a stuck-up billionaire asshole who thinks that he is above the law. And he's completely abusing the term billionaire. For the Nobel Peace Prize, Ronnie Ching, Chieng of The Daily Show, had thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, the morning recommends ditch the stove and make a no-cook chili bean salad. Watch the new Superman movie. Our critic liked it. Consider upgrading your laptop during this week's sales. Ladies and gentlemen, time for games. Here's today's spelling bee. Yesterday's programs were antioxidant, oxidant, and oxidation. Here are today's mini crossword, Wordle connections, sports connections, and strands. Thanks for spending part of your morning with the New York Times. See you tomorrow. Sign up here to get this newsletter in your inbox. Reach our team at themorning@newyorktimes.com. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this morning video. If you did enjoy this morning video, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and enjoy. Firstly, secondly, if you want to make sure you're always up to date on all the things legal breaking, reporting wise on the side of politics, please firstly like, comment, share, subscribe, and enjoy. Secondly, if you want to make sure you're always up to date on all the things legal breaking reporting wise, please hit the bell icon as well as the all notifications option. The bell icon is located directly beneath the screen here on the right hand side of the subscribe button. You guys can also stay up to date by following me on my social medias. That'll be linked down below in the video description. I'm on Instagram, Snapchat, Threads, as well as TikTok and Instagram. Thirdly, ladies and gentlemen, please help me reach and achieve the goal of 200 plus subscribers. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason why I am saying 200 plus subscribers is because right after we reach and achieve the goal of 200 subscribers, we have more subscribers to reach and achieve right after we reach and achieve the goal of 200 subscribers. Fourthly, ladies and gentlemen, please stay positive and please stay safe. And always look for the points of light in today's unfortunate induced darkness caused by the illegal, unconstitutional Trump regime. And always look for the points of light amongst the Trump regime induced darkness. And until my next legal breaking reporting video analysis update and legal breaking reporting, I will talk to you guys in the next video.